Books make you hope. Books make you dream. Books make you laugh. Books make you scream. This is the Books That Make You show, discussing books with authors and experts, unraveling the inner pages of all the books that help make us who we are. Hosted by Desiree Duffy.
Welcome to Books That Make You. I'm your host, Desiree Duffy, and today we are talking about books that make you appreciate clean water in our world. Water, it's the most precious thing on our planet. It gives us life. Clean water is especially important for us humans as well as all of the other creatures. And how much do we take this very essential resource for granted, though? I mean, after all, clean water, it's right over there at the turn of the faucet, or maybe when you press a button on your refrigerator, or it's in a plastic bottle. We take luxuriously long showers in it, and we use it to water our grass and wash our cars whenever we want. It is so easy, right? But what about developing countries? Do you realize that clean water is not so easy to come by, and that many people struggle to have consistent clean water? Our guest today, John Dracup, wrote the book Clean Water for Developing Countries. It's a guide to the different methods that people can implement in providing clean water in the areas of our planet that need it the most. Filtration, disinfection, safe storage, transport, pumps, sanitation, cultural issues, and more are all expertly outlined in the pages of this amazing, revolutionary book. John is a civil engineer and hydrologist. He holds degrees in civil engineering from the University of Washington, Seattle, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Cambridge, and the University of California, Berkeley. He's taught water resource engineering and hydrology at both the University of California and UC Berkeley. In his research, he's focused on the optimization of large-scale water resource systems and the impact of climate change. He's also conducted clean water projects in Africa, Central America. The list goes on and on. He's a fellow of the American Society of Civil Engineers and the American Geophysical Union. In 2001, he was a Fulbright Scholar to Australia. In 2015, the Rotary Foundation cited him for his efforts in supplying clean, safe water in developing countries. John, hello. Welcome to the show.
Desiree, it's a wonderful pleasure to be here.
This is such a great and important book. And one of the things that I'd like to set the stage with is how water is actually tied into poverty in a lot of ways. That's why clean water for developing countries is so important. Can you kind of set the stage and give us some of those great statistics about how that is?
Well, there are 7.7 billion people in the world right now, and about 1 billion of them do not have access to clean water. That means their water is either polluted, has sediment in it, sediment laden, or they have to walk very far distances to obtain the water, mostly by women. Also, this is very tied into poverty. There are 2 billion people in the world living in less than $2 a day. And remarkably, if you make more than $37,000 a year, you're in the top 1% of income in the world. So poverty is very much tied into clean water.
That's amazing. And I think sometimes in the United States, we just take that for granted. We take for granted that clean water, of course it's right there. It's as easy as turning on the faucet. And we don't realize, even at $37,000 a year, that might not seem like a lot of money to most. But when you look at it on that global scale, that's really astounding. And I think sometimes it's a little bit humbling and important for people in the United States and other countries where they have that opportunity to just take a step back and appreciate what we have, and then also look at other countries and think of ways that we can help. So tell me, what, in your opinion, what is one of the most important things that you think people in the United States and elsewhere who are making more than $37,000 a year should realize about clean water in our world? What does the average person, so to speak, need to know?
Well, you need to know that we can clean up the most polluted water. We have the technology in filtering, disinfection, to go from toilets to tap or showers to flowers And we have that technology to do that. The problem is it's expensive, and these developing countries do not have the funds, so they have to rely on non-governmental agencies, NGOs around the world, who have the desire and the technology know-how to help them. But on the other hand, we have cultural issues. When you have to have the host country, the host village, very much involved in the providing of the clean water. Otherwise, it won't work.
Mm-hmm. And you've traveled to so many of these different areas: Kenya, Peru, Honduras, Guatemala, so many more. Can you maybe share with us a story or two, something that happened where you felt that impact on the community, where they were receptive and things really worked out to the benefit of everybody?
Well, my most interesting story is about Remba Island, which is a small island out in Lake Victoria in western Kenya. 8,000 to 10,000 fishermen are on this small island. They make their living by selling fish to the local markets. And the water all around the island is polluted with Escherichia coli runoff from the open defecation on the island. So this was a Rotary International project, and over time we built this water system with filters and kiosks. It took us 3 years, but we got it done. It cost $165,000, which was paid by Rotary clubs in all over the country. But one of the real great moments of my career was the day we provided clean, fresh water for everyone on the island. We gave it free the first day, and women from all over the island came to get this water from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. It was really one of the high points of my career.
Oh, that must have been amazing. And it's interesting, too, you say women tend to be the ones responsible for carrying the water in a lot of these places. And I visually see, you see the pictures all the time of the women carrying baskets and buckets of water. Is that something that you've seen a lot of, too, of women actually being the ones to transport it?
Well, in the developing world, women do a lot of the work. They do the cooking. Of course, they have to have the children and nurse the children, raise the children. But also they travel long distances to gather the water and wash the clothes in the water and many other chores.
So I have to imagine by providing clean water and making access easier, you're also giving women in these areas opportunities to essentially do other things. They can pursue education or projects that they enjoy, and it expands their horizons too.
Absolutely. There's been remarkable changes on this Remba Island over the years. Reduction of diarrhea, children going to school. They stopped buying bottled water. They're buying it from the kiosks. So it's remarkable changes.
That's amazing. And you mentioned a few things that I want to zero in on. I know that you're very involved with Rotary, and I want to talk about that. But first, let's delve into your book more specifically, Clean Water for Developing Countries. The great thing about this book, it really is a guide for people who want to bring this to different areas. So can you set the stage and tell us a little bit more about how your book is laid out?
Yes, this is 5 years in the making, as most first books take. The first 5 chapters are how to do it. You have to have a safe source. The well has to be covered. You have to remove the sediment. You have to filter the water. You then have to disinfect the water. And usually in developed countries, it's from chlorine. But in developing countries, they're not used to the taste of chlorine. So that's a remarkable problem. And then they have to have safe storage, so people can't dip their hands into the bucket that already has clean water. The rest of the book covers a multitude of topics, including sanitation, water quality, marketing. One of the remarkable things about marketing is that you can't give it away for free. If you give tickets to a concert, for example, to someone, they're less likely to use it than if they buy it themselves. So it's important that you charge them for this resource. But there's also very important cultural issues. because people have been drinking that polluted water for years, and they like the taste. And they like to go out in the woods and have open defecation, in spite of the fact that it's a very poor habit. But they like to interact with the people there. So there are a number of cultural issues that have to be overcome.
And how do you address that? I mean, what happens when somebody is used to being able to defecate in the woods and it seems so odd to me, but they like the taste? What are some of the ways that you circumvent that and help educate them?
That certainly is odd. Particularly, I've asked people that are engineers in the U.S. from India, for example. They said, I go back to my village. I like to drink out of that stream because my grandmother did and my great-grandmother. And everybody has used that source, but still it's polluted. And you have to really show them the data, the reduction in diarrhea. The children can go to school now. So it is a real problem.
You are very active with the Rotary Foundation, and that's part of what they work on, too. Can you talk about Rotary for a little bit?
Well, Rotary is a remarkable organization. I've been a member about 10 years. They are 1.2 million members around the world in 34,000 clubs. They're very much into humanitarian activities. They have 6 focus areas, and one of them is, of course, clean water and sanitation. They're into eliminating polio in the world, for example. And their motto is service above self, which my wife really liked after she heard that. She said I should get involved in that in the house more. So I've really enjoyed being a member of Rotary.
I think it's interesting, too, when we talk about sanitation. I know the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, that's part of what they focus on, too, as far as making sure that we can even have toilets or methods of eliminating waste in other countries as well. And I know you work with other NGOs, and even the proceeds from your book are to help other NGOs. Do you want to talk about maybe some of the other organizations and other groups that are out there that are helping as well?
Well, if you make a search for NGOs working on clean water, you get thousands of them, and some are very effective. World Vision, for example, is one, water.org, many that come to mind, of course, Rotary. And all of them are doing work in various degrees. One of the problems is water is seldom tested. Once they get water, they assume it's just because it looks clean, that it doesn't have arsenic or fluoride in it above the standard levels. So it's more difficult than you might imagine to provide this source.
And that's true. People just take it for granted. So you mentioned something that grabs my attention, fluoride. Aren't we supposed to have that in our water because it helps our teeth? I'm not sure I'm following that.
Fluoride is one of those things that a little is good and a lot is not. So in Kenya, for example, where they have some of the areas have fluoride, this is all natural occurring, of course, both arsenic and fluoride from the rocks. It's leached out of the rocks. And fluoride stains people's teeth if they get too much. Mm-hmm. And so when they smile, they have this brown stain that you look at, and they have trouble getting jobs because of that. So most water sources in the U.S. have a small amount of fluoride because it helps the bones.
Again, people think that fluoride is good, but it's all a matter of quantities. So when people are testing waters, when they are actually analyzing the water, what are some of the different things that they see in different areas of the world that need to be addressed? I mean, is there a kit or something that they use to test it? How does that all work?
Well, there are testing. The best way to do it is for qualified testing labs, but there are few of these in the developing world. You find them in a local large city, but it may be hundreds of miles away. There are field tests, which I've covered in my chapter on water quality, mm-hmm. by a number of different organizations that are very effective. And what you're really testing for is Escherichia coli. Everybody hears about this. Escherichia, by the way, is a man's name. He was a German scientist who determined that this was a test to determine whether or not there was fecal in the water. So it's a test that's important to do in all water sources in developing countries. And then the idea is to eliminate it, to take it down to zero. But also arsenic, fluoride, heavy metals, or other things that should be tested for.
Mm-hmm. And even when it comes to disease and different things that are going on, that they pop up all the time. The recent coronavirus that has been spreading, they are saying that it is now living. They've tested it and they found that it's living in fecal matter. So that's another way of transport. And so it seems that understanding the importance of clean water, because if you are in an area and the water is contaminated by fecal matter and there are diseases that now can live in that, it's just another method to potentially spread those diseases, right?
That's right. And this is a sanitation part of water, sanitation, and hygiene, wash. That's why the Gates Foundation has gone after sanitation as their priority in this area. There's 2.6 billion people in the world do not have access to reliable, excellent sanitation facilities. One of the solutions is called EcoSan, ECOSAN, which is a type of toilet that is used throughout the world, and it's available. You can study it on your website, and is, in my opinion, a good solution.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the companies and some of the products out there, because I know that's covered in your book as well. Procter & Gamble, I believe, has a solution that can help purify water. You want to talk about that technology a little bit too?
Well, Procter & Gamble markets a little package that sells for about 50 cents. You can buy it on Amazon and other places. You can take a glass of water, pour it in, stir it, wait for a few minutes, and you can actually drink it. So it's been marketed all over the world by Procter & Gamble, and the interesting thing is, again, it's expensive. If you're doing a glass of water for 50 cents and you're living on $2 a day, you can't do that. You can't use that.
Exactly, and it goes back to what we mentioned originally. 50 cents, to me, I spend $2-3 just on a glass of iced tea, you know? So it's all a matter of helping the people who need it the most. So when we're talking about your book, who do you feel should be reading the book? And how can the average person, I guess my bigger question is, the average person is thinking, I can't do anything. But can they? Is reading your book and becoming aware part of the process of making this a better, cleaner world in regards to water?
Oh, yes, of course. I think the market, of course, is for people actually working in the field. There's thousands of them. But also academics are interested in it as a textbook or a supplemental textbook. But my real focus was on for people who are working on the world in this field. For example, I was at a Rotary meeting and a man said to me, give me $2,000, I'll drill a well in West Africa for you and put your name on it. And I said, what about the quality of the water? He said, well, it's better than they had. Well, he really didn't know that. I mean, it might have had arsenic in it because he wasn't testing it. So this is something that you have to know a certain amount of technology. You have to be aware of certain problems. And that's what I've covered in this book.
And as our world changes, as our climate changes, I have to imagine that that's having a big impact as well. Do you want to talk about how climate change is affecting water globally?
Well, climate change, of course, is heating the planet. If you don't believe that, just think about your car when you get in on a sunny day, how it's warm. It's because the incoming radiation from the sun is trapped in the car, just like the carbon dioxide is trapping the incoming solar radiation around the globe. And so it's real, it's happening. It's at an all-time high right now since the industrial age began. And this is going to affect many areas, but in clean water, it's going to heat the oceans, of course, but also the streams. It's going to make the problem more difficult to solve.
I have to imagine that warmer streams might produce more E. coli and the little creatures, because now they have a better quote-unquote environment to live in. So the ramifications of that, really, when you think about it, are astounding, as well as people who live in a certain area that are used to having a certain amount of rainfall that feeds those streams, that feeds their groundwater, etc. If they're not getting the same amount of precipitation, that's going to have a huge impact as well.
Yes, you're going to have areas of the world with more water and others with less water. But of course, as you point out, Desiree, the heating of streams will increase the growth of bacteria and other viruses that we want to eliminate from the water.
And what areas of the world, in your estimation, and from what you've seen personally and what the science might tell us, are the most at risk of having some kind of impact, negative impact from climate change?
Well, it's happening all over the world, but the areas, of course, where water is clean water is such a problem is sub-Saharan Africa, India, and parts of Asia. The developed countries, Western Europe, North America, have solved this problem. One of the things that you can think about is that in 1900, our life expectancy in the United States was 46 years. Now it's 79 years. And one of the things that changed that, besides vaccinations and medicine and refrigeration, is that clean water is available in our country, and gone is cholera and other waterborne diseases.
Exactly. And that has a big impact on us here in the United States. So we might not necessarily be so much at risk. Or are we? I'm curious, because every once in a while you read a study or you hear something about the water. We just happen to be in Los Angeles right now. And from my understanding, Los Angeles has surprisingly cleaner water than one might expect. But there's different areas of the country where they might test something and all of a sudden they realize that there's something going on there that people weren't aware of. Are there any areas of the United States that you think are better, worse, or should maybe people think about, checking their water a little bit more?
Well, every water district puts out a water quality report, which you usually get online, but I'm sure few people read those. I do, of course. But of course, everyone's heard about Flint, Michigan. There's been, and I cover this in one of my sections of the book, of problems in Milwaukee that occurred a few years ago, in Ontario, Canada, even in Sydney, Australia, where due to mismanagement of the water, gets polluted and people actually die. And so we have to be vigilant about this. But we have in the developed countries, this is just political will and willing to spend the funds, on the infrastructure to bring this clean water to everyone. And it's a shame that everyone in this country cannot have clean, drinkable water. We really don't have to buy bottled water. We should be able to just take it out of the tap.
Yeah, and Flint, Michigan is a great example of that. Again, it's impacting people who are more in impoverished neighborhoods than their counterparts. So let me ask you this, because I drank bottled water. And what a great marketing ploy at some point in time. When I was growing up, if somebody told me that I could buy a bottle of water for $2, I would have thought they were crazy. Why would anybody want to get something that you can get out of the tap for free? But we're all doing it. We all buy bottled water. Is it really that much better for us than tap water, or does it depend upon the area that we're in?
Well, it's interesting. If the city of Los Angeles Department of Water and Power gets its water from the east side of Sierras. And in 1988, Consumer Report rated all the water systems in America, and the number one was LA Department of Water and Power. You have about 50 parts per million of dissolved solids, very remarkably low. And so you're really wasting your money if you live in the city of Los Angeles. But it's the LA Department of Water and Power only gives their water from the Owens Valley to the 4 million people that live in Los Angeles. If you live elsewhere in the country, I would look at the water quality report that's put out by your water district and see whether or not you need to buy bottled water.
That's great advice. That water quality report sounds like something that we should all be cognizant of and checking out on a regular basis to see how it might affect us. You have an upcoming event, don't you? You're doing an event with the Rotary, I believe, in Hawaii. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, Rotary has an annual convention somewhere in the world. Last year it was in Hamburg. This year it's going to be in Honolulu from June 5th to the 10th in their convention center in Oahu. And I hope to have a booth there to sell the book. Also, one of the Rotary's action group, it's called WashRag, Water and Sanitation Rotary Action Group. They'll have a booth there, and I'll have my book for sale there. So I'm promoting it as best I can through colleagues and other NGOs around that are working in this area.
Well, it's an excellent book for, again, academia, for NGOs, and just for anybody who is interested in clean water in our world, which really should be everyone because it impacts us all in so many ways. Congratulations on creating such a great book, Clean Water for Developing Countries. John, can you tell people where they can find the book and more information about you online, your website, etc.?
Well, if you're a bookstore or a library, you can get it from Ingram Spark, which is a distributor, puts it out to 39,000 sites. So I know from colleagues in Turkey, Australia, New Zealand that it's for sale in their country from Amazon.com, of course, both in printed and Kindle iBook form, BarnesandNoble.com, and many other sites.
Great. And your website, too. People can find out more about you and the book on your website as well, right?
Right. Thank you.
You bet. John, this has been such a great conversation. Thank you for joining me today. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And again, the book is Clean Water for Developing Countries by John Dracup. And you can find out more about him on his website. It's cleanwater.com. And again, that book is available in so many different places. You can find it on Amazon. If you are a bookstore buyer or you have a bookstore, you can order it from Ingram. And it's available from all sorts of different locations where you can find your books. Once again, everyone, my name is Desiree Duffy, and thank you for joining us today here on Books That Make You. And you can find out more about us on booksthatmakeyou.com. That's our website. And you can follow on Facebook and Instagram as well. And we're always doing fun bookish things. We have a newsletter that you can sign up for. You can win free books and find out about all of the books that you can add to your to-be-read list. Until next time, please enjoy all of the books that make you who you are.
The executive producer for Books That Make You is Desiree Duffy. Produced and sound mastered by Phil Giangrande. Engineering by Dave Nabox. Social media and promotion by Bree Sweeter. For more, visit booksthatmakeyou.com.